Hello, and welcome back to Season 2 of Genshin Ranked. I'm your lead developer, Cuddles. And joining me on stage today is my associate developer, Joeman. And before we begin, I want to mention that I'm so incredibly grateful to have all of you here tonight. Ranked has come a long way since it first started, and I'm proud to say that our project is as lively as ever. We hope to continue developing the future of Genshin esports. This game mode seems to be incredibly popular, and every character has been meticulously tuned by our balancing team to ensure a fair amount of variety without compromising the core combat experience. We have a growing community of both tournament and casual players, and I want to thank every single one of you for attending and for your support. Without further delay, I'd like to pass the mic to Joeman so he can bring us into today's match.
Welcome everybody, I'm Joeman, and I am delighted to be here. It is a beautiful winter season, but it has been busy, especially this time of year for students like me. So shout out to all our competitors and students working hard and studying for finals. We look forward to seeing you all do well on field and in the future. We've got two really incredible teams facing off tonight, so let's take a look at the bracket. Today we have the Sanest Travelers versus the Chiori Glazers. TST are last season's winning team, and CGZ has two members from the previous second place team. So this is a real rivalry, and I cannot wait to see if CGZ can upset the bracket this time and come out on top, or if TST remains as
yeah, it's an E sound, man. Like, it gets confusing after a while. What can I say? Yeah, but at this point in the quarterfinals, they've had to face off against a challenging preliminary set of bosses as well as an intense round of 16. But they stand before us tonight, ready to take the stage and advance to the semifinals with a chance to compete for a $1,000 grand prize. So again, teams will draft bosses, pick and ban characters, then speedrun as a team of 3 to work towards winning a best of 7. Each team is comprised of 4 players, while the world is a 3-player and a ref. This gives teams safe options if they want to strategize their drafts amongst each other.
Alright, let's go ahead and take a little bit more look into our teams. Start off with the Sanest Travelers. They are a close group of friends led by the Season 1 best drafter, so they've got some really strong drafting.
Yeah, and I think what's also really extraordinary about them too is that they also have some pretty good builds, right? Would you say?
Oh, certainly. I think all 4 of them have some of the best builds here in Genshin Ranked, and every single player on their team has all of the best characters that you want to be able to compete in Genshin Ranked.
That flexibility, that's really what gets you the wins here, especially when it comes to a good draft.
Yeah, but it's not just TST that's strong here. I mean, CGZ also has some excellent drafting. Lurkin is another one of the best drafters, is currently the one leading CGZ. And honestly, their entire team is all a lot of ranked veterans, so I think they're also going to be able to perform exceedingly well.
Yeah, don't forget Lurkin's distinction that he's a Season 1 MVP and a DPS MVP, voted by both the viewers and by the players. And I think it's really interesting, like, not only are they good at drafting, but the bosses that they pick, those are like really risky bosses. They pick a lot of aggressive stuff that would be hard to play into, but they find a way to play safe. I don't think I've seen them die a lot during Season 1 either. Like, if you look at their cards, it's mostly green.
Yeah, their consistency is top of the line. If the other team has some kind of falter, if they start dying on a few bosses, CGZ is going to come out on top.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that CGZ has the very unique characters and cons because of the ranked balancing system. They happen to have weird stuff like a C2 Chiori, C6 Ayaka, C6 Ito, C6 Nilou even. I mean, like, how many times do you see people play Nilou competitively, right? But I think it's definitely something interesting. I'm really looking forward to it.
Certainly, and they're balanced pretty well. They've each got different weapon bands and whatnot, but each of those characters brings some unique elements. Ayaka and Nilou have some really strong res shred, so they can fit into a lot of different teams, which opens up the door for a few very unique team comps for CGZ.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But TST, they're also backed up by their numbers, backed up by their stats. I mean, the win rates coming out of Popsicle, Pewter, and Kyo, all above 70%. And these guys, they have a good drafter in Popsicle, right? And a good DPS too. He loves the Arlay, loves that Milani, loves that Hu Tao. But I also want to mention he's backed up by a lot of good supports and sub-DPS teammates as well.
Yeah, and I mean, experience is really what jumps out at me when I look at that team. Popsicle, Puden, I mean, these people have so many games, just casual games playing, which gives them a crazy amount of experience. So they really know their way around these bosses. But I don't want to take away from CGZ. Lurkin is another one of the players that has played the most here in Genshin Ranked with almost a 70% win rate as well. And he is, again, an excellent drafter and a very experienced player. So they have some real fighting spirit here.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're not going to forget Puden too. I mean, Puden's he's got a 75% win rate. He's the one carrying. He's got a lot of the good damage as well, playing that Raiden Hu Tao or that Nahida.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's one of TST's strongest points. They've got multiple C2 Nahidas, they got multiple C2 Kazuhas, they have multiples of every character. It really lets them just explore a whole bunch of different team comps and really pick and choose who gets to play what character so that they are confident that the best person is playing their best character.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's go into the coin flip here because, I mean, TST is they are like the higher seed, right? They scored 3rd overall in prelim, so let's go ahead and see. TST has elected to pick Tails, so let's go ahead and see what comes up. And it's gonna be it's a heads.
Heads.
Oh,
okay,
heads.
so that means CGZ gets to pick the team.
Yeah, it looks like, and Lurkin has decided to draft onto Team 1, so that's going to be really interesting. Again, you would think that being the higher team, you know, you'd like to have that option for the first pick of both the bans and of the draft, but for now, TST is going to have to think on their feet a little bit, or maybe they plan for the Team 2 side anyway, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at what happens in draft.
Yeah, I am really excited to see how all this goes. I think, you know, Lurkin and Popsicle are possibly our 2 best drafters in the entire league.
Oh, what the heck? A Swanee opener?
Swanee opener from Lurkin. Interesting. So that's a very interesting boss because you have to take a cryo. I don't think I've seen a single team beat that boss without a cryo unit. So it really forces some teams into a corner if they don't draft around it.
Ooh, but the APEP though, APEP's also like a pretty challenging, aggressive pick. I mean, that Swanee pick, I think about it now, coming from CGZ as well. I mean, we said they like to play aggressive bosses. Swanee is a one-shot for a lot of weaker teams in the rotation. So if they don't have good defense, you know, you're taking 15,000, 16,000 damage right off the bat.
Yeah, it's especially deadly if you have a unit like Bennett, which gives you that Pyro Aura, because you can get melted immediately. And Electrovine.
I think they have to be drafting around the Ayaka. I mean, Solitaire, Swanee, Electrovine, like Ayaka's not an instant ban, even at C6. But I think they're going for the Ayaka support here, a little bit of that res shred, trying to get some damage from maybe a double melt, or like a double pyro maybe into a melt, but it's gonna be a really interesting thing to try and watch.
Yeah, I mean, if they draft Seahorse, then we know it's locked in for that Ayaka. Ayaka is an incredibly strong character for bosses like this, which need a lot of elements.
Ooh, and a Terror Shroom. I feel like that's like a TST classic right there. They love squishy bosses. I mean, they know they can win their short DPS checks. So
they won it their last game, their best of 16. They won that boss pretty handedly. So we'll see if they can pull that off again.
Yeah, I mean, going from APEP to Terror Shroom is definitely an interesting choice, though. I guess they're trying to rule out the Dendro pick, but I don't know if Popsicle really sees the cryo angle that they might be trying to use.
Yeah, but if CGZ goes too hard into the cryo angle, they're not gonna have a strong enough team to beat this DPS check. GeoCube. Now that is not a boss you see very often here.
I think CGZ certainly has a few aces up their sleeve, or if they're not aces, at least he has a full house sitting down the river. Because these are not conventional drafts that you normally see in Genshin Ranked. I mean, okay, Electrovine maybe is a cryo check, but GeoCube certainly poses its own set of challenges, right? So it's like you have a team of unconventional players versus a team of very textbook players, and it's like you're trying to see who's gonna win between those two. Arlecchino ban.
Yep, that's 100% targeting that Popsicle. Arlecchino is arguably Popsicle's strongest character. It's very
and they fire back with another target ban on Chiori.
Is arguably Lurkin's strongest. These two are just duking it out, trying to get rid of the strongest characters from each leader.
But I do want to mention right now, they are at the stage of the Bennett Gambit. They are opening the Bennett Gambit with actually a Chulonin. So whether or not Team 2 bans Bennett is going to be interesting. I mean, Bennett's pretty much like an instant first pick from most of these teams, right? Especially for Ayaka Team 2. Like, you need that Pyro, you need that Melt. So I'm not sure if Popsicle sees that angle, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think another thing they need to think about is Geo has really been a specialty for CGZ. Those Navias that a few of them have, they have a C3 Zhongli. These are very strong options for GeoCube. And when it comes to Navia, just a strong option in general. So.
And there's the Bennett Gambit declined, so they're not going to enable that Melt whatsoever. And again, it just looks like Lurkin has his first choice right now. I mean, with the Arlay out of the way, it means that the Pyro DPS is probably gonna have to be Linear Hu Tao if they still want to play a Vape team off Milani or even a Melt team.
Yeah, but I mean, C2 Farina and C2 Nikita are still both open. I think TST has kind of tried to draft around not going Nikita. They picked Apep, they picked Terror Shroom, which have high Dendro resistance. And there you go, Farina, C2.
Yeah, I mean, even I guess it has to be the Navia, right? I mean, if you're going for a shotgun angle, I mean, Farina buffing Navia and double Geo is a great choice. Oh, you know what I could also read too is maybe they're gonna play Navia Ito Farina. That's a double Geo, that's a buffer, you know, those are some pretty spicy picks. I could see it coming, but then how are you gonna ban it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, interesting that they're the ones that banned Shillinen. I feel like that was one of their strongest picks. Works really well with some of their team. But I mean, allowing the other team to get Mualani and Shillinen is so dangerous, so I can see why they banned it.
Oh, but Popsicle actually opts for a Novelette first pick. And then I wonder what
Novelette has been performing extremely well, especially in Lurkin's hands. That's one of Lurkin's best characters.
Ooh, they went for mono. That's definitely a mono read right there, or it sets a really good driver foundation for a Vape.
Yeah, so their last character there could either be a VV like Kazuha or a Hu Tao. They've got two very strong Hu Tao players in Popsicle and in Puden, so that's another very good angle.
Absolutely. So I think both of these teams are honestly going to be playing to the top of their roster. Again, if Oust manages to work that C6 Ito into a comp, or if they're locking the knot. Oh, the Kazuha steal coming from Lurkin.
Interesting. I was really predicting that he was going to take Mualani Linny, you know, try to go for the Vape comp and just ignore the free. No, look at that. Kazuha and Hu Tao shutting down both of TST's options. Interesting.
So it looks like CGZ isn't really, they're not just here to fight alongside TST, but they're really going at it, going for the throat, trying to take away whatever they can. And a Chaska lock, okay.
Yeah, that's another strong pick. Chaska has been extremely powerful, running VV while also dealing out a pretty decent amount of damage. That has been very strong.
Yeah, but now we go into the second ban phase, and TST should have control over this part. Again, they do have the first ban open to them, and the rotation basically flips. But at this point, I don't even know if Team 1 has a real team ready for them.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny. I think this is like typical Lurkin here. I feel like Lurkin's signature style of drafting is just shut down the other team as hard as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Zhongli ban is a pretty easy one, especially when you want to get rid of GeoCube. But I wonder what DPS's Team 1's going to have to pick.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe they take the Navia. If they're banning Zhongli and leaving Navia open, I feel like you have to take Navia as your first pick there. She's strong.
But here we go. They go for the Linny ban. Interesting, but I mean, we'll take it. I guess they want to shut down Vape entirely, but I don't know if Linny was really the greatest move. Maybe against a Chaska, that's kind of what they were thinking, but not looking the greatest right now. Team 1 kind of on a back foot, but they could go for a nice parry. And there's a Ganyu.
That was another character. Neither team had drafted a Cryo, so I was waiting to see which team was able to snatch up Ganyu first. But I don't think that CGZ is gonna. There you go. I don't think they were going for the Ganyu. I think they were leaving that open on purpose so that they could take Ayaka.
I guess they might be playing a Melt Vape, a Melt VV. Sorry, yeah. I mean, like, you have the Hu Tao, Kazuha, Ayaka. That's a team. Definitely functional, especially since you have like the defense shred and the res shred. That's a Hu Tao hyper carry right there. You're looking at.
Certainly, but super short uptimes and small DPS windows. So it really is a rotation locked. It depends on how many rotations you think you're going to be able to do it.
And there's the Navia. There they are. They're getting ready for that.
Navia and Ayaka. So Evine and Suwani, their two bosses, I think will be probably their bosses. I think that they've got a good chance at winning both of those.
This is a very coin flippy match. I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I mean, so far, I don't think Team 2 has an option for Swanee at all. I mean, what are they going to do right now? They have Ganyu, they have Chaska, and Chaska's like barely functional on Swanee.
Yeah, Ganyu really needs either a full mono cryo comp or a melt comp, and they do not have a pyro right now. So
I think they committed to the mono cryo. I haven't seen a Chongyun pick in ages.
Yeah, but like... Chongyun, I'm wondering if that was a random, if they ran out of time there, or if they really wanted to go for Chongyun just to try to support the Ganyu or something.
Yeah, I mean, like, I really appreciate, first of all, how both teams are kind of like forcing each other out of the conventional meta, forcing each other to really think creatively with the characters they have.
Yeah, and I think both of them are really drafting around the bosses that they picked. Apep, the strongest character there is Nuvalette. Suwani, you're picking Ayaka. Geocube, you're picking Navia. They're trying to draft around the bosses that they picked. So I think this might be a real back and forth match.
Yeah, and the Milani pick coming from TST was just going for the last steal of the entire match. That's really...
I think that was CGZ's last option. Without Milani, like, they don't have... I don't think they have a team that's strong enough to compete on those DPS checks like Terra Shroom and Weenut.
Right, yeah, like the short, like the small window squishy boss checks, like that's where Milani excels. So they really took that opportunity away and go for a, you know, Xiangling, safer pick. Definitely not a Milani, maybe in Spiral Abyss, but like,
yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be really interesting. We're gonna have to see how that ends up playing out, wouldn't you say? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Team 2 having Mulan with no Pyro, I mean, I highly doubt they're going to end up playing her. They have Nuvalette, they have Yolan, they have the strong Mono Hydro options, so I think the Milani there was just a steal. It's just really interesting. It does not happen often that a team will take Milani and then just not end up using her.
I mean, like, again, what are you really supposed to do in that kind of a context? Like, you're not gonna really have a real vape. You're pretty much dumping all of your bets into melts, right? If you're gonna do that kind of a setup.
Yeah, certainly. I think that that might be CGZ's strongest option here. But I mean, they do have Navia, and so just running their stronger carries, running like Farina, Ayaka, Navia, like that's two strong DPSs and a very strong support. It might be enough to eke out one or two wins for those DPS checks. Yeah,
and again, remember, like, they only really need one DPS check win if they want to win 5-2, right?
Yeah, I think they've got their special bosses, like, locked in. They've got their Cryo for Suwani, they've got the Break for Evine, they've got the Geo for Geocube. So I think those will most likely be pretty easy wins for ZGZ. If they can win one of those other bosses, other DPS checks, then I think that's what'll lead them to this victory.
Yeah, on TST's end, like, how are you thinking that their thing is gonna go?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. They don't really have a healer, but they're playing Nuvalette, Elon, Chaska most likely, which is a very safe team comp, while also being one of the highest DPS comps in the game. So I think as long as Yolan doesn't take too much damage, and, you know, being an HP scaler, she's got plenty of room for mistakes. I think that they've got a pretty good chance at winning all the DPS checks and coming out here 4-3.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I mean, going up against a roster like this, I will mention when you don't have a healer against APEP, like, it does get incredibly difficult. So having your HP cut down that early in the match could set you up for a little bit of a mistake later on. But I don't know, it is CGZ, man. They do play pretty safe. They do know their way around their characters. So it's not going to be too much of a challenge, at least I don't think. Yeah,
I mean, they do have two C1 Nuvalettes on TST. So if they play correctly, they could just have whoever's on Nuvalette sitting up in front of the boss and just tanking all the damage, while Yolan and Chaska stay far enough back that they're not getting hit at all, which is, I'm betting, what they're planning to do right now.
Absolutely. And I mean, looks like they want to load in maybe, you know, we do give we give both teams a little bit of prep time to just load in, get their characters, get their rosters set up. So I think right now they're still trying to decide who they want to field for field for maybe the Navia, because I mean, like, I imagine Oust has a pretty good Navia, right? I mean, who else on that team?
Lurkin. Lurkin has also a very strong Navia. So I think he has the strongest Navia on the team. I mean, maybe it's Oust actually, but both of them have a very strong Navia, so they've got a couple options. And I don't think Lurkin is going to be playing the Farina, as C3 is banned, and I believe he has C3. So I'm betting Lurkin's going to be on that Navia.
I mean, he has a really good build, right? I think he just transfers his Chiori build over to the Navia, and I think it probably hits just as hard, so I wouldn't be entirely surprised.
I mean, I'd be surprised if he ran Husk on Navia, but yeah, maybe his Golden Troop artifacts, certainly. But yeah, I think he runs Husk on Chiori. But I think I'm interested to see who's on Hu Tao. I think it will probably be Lurkin, but I don't know how much Lurkin Hu Tao I've seen.
Yeah. Lurkin's, yeah, I mean, he used to be recognized for that Hu Tao. I mean, you did see a little bit of it in Season 1, because I remember it was the character that he did play extensively. But I think now that the rosters, or the drafts shifted a little more to banning more intense supports, I think his Hu Tao has gotten away onto the other team.
Yeah, it's kind of sad on the back line. But yeah, I guess he'll be probably bringing it out again. So it'll be interesting if he ends up playing that, or if he ends up just going with the Navia pick.
Absolutely, yeah. I think both, it's really interesting though, because I'm pretty sure both teams have been discussing this draft for like ages. I mean, you did remember, like, they've been competitors and rivals for months on end, and this is really where they get to make that moment shine. So
yeah, I would hope so. I mean, and not only practicing drafts, but practicing bosses. I'm assuming that both teams have practiced each boss that they picked numerous times. So I think that even more shows that each team is going to be winning the bosses that they picked.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, you know, Drake win for TST, Sawani for CGZ, Drake or Apep for TST.
Maybe it is going to be back and forth. Yeah, right? Exactly. That's the read. But I mean, like, if they can knock out a team that beats Yelan, Nivelet, Chaska, I think Chiori Glazers will get that win.
Yeah, but they're doing the opposite of what we were talking about before. They're playing the riskier team. They're playing the less common team, while TST is playing the safe Nivelet, Chaska, Yelan team.
Yeah, to be fair though, I will say that they have Farina as their healer. I didn't think about it last time, but I don't think they would run Farina on a team that has Hu Tao. They wouldn't run Farina unless they are.
I mean, Farina Hu Tao is one of the strongest synergies. So we'll see if they end up doing it. Like Farina Hu Tao Ayaka is kind of strange. Maybe it's Farina Hu Tao Navia. That's honestly a decent comp. You just got to be careful of Navia stealing those waves.
I think it would just really surprise me though if Lurkin did decide to put his entire team on his back and play Hu Tao like that. I mean, I know he's starting off the pre-lower HP, right? But it's still a crazy concept to even imagine. Like, I don't know, if I was in a tournament, I would not make myself the solo DPS of a team if I'm facing off against my #1 rival. You know what I'm saying? So
certainly. But it looks like teams have kind of already selected their characters on both sides. It does look like Lurkin is going to be on that Hu Tao Navia skit on the Kaza Ayaka, and Ost on that Farina Shangling. So, like I was talking before, I think Ost will just be sitting on that Farina the entire game. And I think Skit will probably be staying in Ayaka for most of it, but it's interesting to see if Hu Tao Kazuha Farina can work. That might actually be able to work if they practiced it enough, but definitely a tricky boss, or a tricky comp to run.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Just going over final weapon checks at this moment, but you know, it's a little bit of a tough fight. What can I say? I still feel like even when you're running that many buffers, that many supports, it's still going to be an uphill battle for you. Especially, I mean, Hu Tao, as strong as she is, you know, she's still a version 1 character. And when you're fighting against the legends of Natlin and Fontaine, I think you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't bring yourself one more DPS.
Certainly. So, yeah. And of course, they can always make changes. So Lurkin might start on any Tau, see if it works, and then if it doesn't, bring out the Navia. You know, Navia, all she needs is crystallize, whereas Hu Tao, you really want to be getting those vapes.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I think for TST, I think they're just going to be sticking to that Yelan Nuvalet Chaska. I think they'll switch to Ganyu for Suwani, or Changyin maybe, depending on which character they think will deal more damage, Yelan or Nuvalet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'll just be sitting on that comp for most of the entire game.
Yeah, I still can't believe they drafted Chongyun though. That's a I think Chongyun's definitely one of the more interesting choices for any boss.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting for Electrovine. I think now that I'm looking at it, I think Ganyu is probably a stronger pick for Evine than Ayaka. Evine can always be shot at with Ganyu, so they might actually be able to pull off a Evine win.
Well, I think honestly they would be able to pull off an Evine win if it wasn't Popsicle on Ganyu. I will say that much. His reputation with the ranged characters in this game is not really up to snuff.
I mean, he is extremely talented on the DPS he plays a lot, but let's just say Ganyu is not a DPS he plays a lot.
Oh,
yes.
Whoa. That's a little bit of a mishap.
Sign.
Yeah. Surely it's just a practice run. Surely.
But yeah, being on trackpad definitely has its disadvantages for Popsicle. It's not exactly ideal for charge attack characters.
Before Genshin Ranked, he actually used to play Counter-Strike on a trackpad. Can you believe that?
I mean, that's incredibly impressive in my opinion. I am absolutely terrible on a trackpad, so I find it extremely impressive anytime I see someone trying to run that.
All right, only 20 seconds left in prep, and honestly, this is something right here. So it's funny because Popsicle's on Putin's account just due to global timings, Putin being one of their South America players, but yeah, this is gonna be a fun match. I'm pretty excited to see it. I think both teams are gonna go ahead and load up for their ER.
Yeah, so they get to start full HP, full energy before the first boss, but yeah. I'm interested. I'm guessing that CGZ will try to lower their HP. That's one of the strongest tactics for Farina, is you start with a little bit lower HP. That way Farina can immediately heal you up. And
I agree, but like, surely they don't undergo the same exact mistake they just pulled off at Drake, because if they start with that as an opener on Drake, the entire run is nearly screwed.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to hope that Ost on Farina is able to keep the team alive. When you're playing Farina, you know, you don't need to worry about executing combos or whatever it is, but you do need to be looking very closely at your teammates' HP. You're constantly draining it. So if they get too low, you have to heal them back up to make sure they stay alive. So it's really on you for a lot of it to keep your team alive.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I guess the damage contribution is like probably negligible at that point. I think that maybe it's like the saying, like, you know, ER is the most important stat until it isn't. Thanks, Chrome Causation. But I guess in the same way, having HP is the most important skill until it isn't. So
exactly. So if you can get a bit greedy, if you think that your team's going to be able to survive on a little bit of low HP, get a few more hits in on Farina, is another worth it.
You know, maybe a few more N1C cancels, surely, right, guys?
Right. But yeah, that's the decision making you got to do in Farina. Is you got to decide: do I want to try to get a little bit more damage in? Do I need to apply Hydro here for Hu Tao? You know,
yeah, like how competent is my team? You know, like those kinds of questions.
Yeah, those are things you gotta think about. And another thing is, like, if you know your boss as well, you can notice an attack and go, "Oh, this is a very strong attack that I've seen many people die on. Maybe I need to heal up right there." Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely seen that before. So
yeah, there's quite a few things that I've seen, but yeah, I think as both teams are getting ready now, they're doing a final ER run down on bot side, but.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I think both teams have practiced a lot. I've definitely seen some practice from TST, and I've heard about plenty of practice for CGZ. So I'm thinking both of them are going to be extremely good on their bosses, and I think both of them have enough experience to play well on the other team's bosses as well. So
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the match people have wanted to see for ages. I mean, this is it, right? Lurkin putting his whole team on his back, his money where his mouth is, where that staff of Homa is too. And
Certainly.
he's banking on it.
I mean, I think when I realized that it was going to be a TST versus CGZ game, I was quite surprised. This is essentially last season's finals game. You know, CGZ. This is only 2 members of TSA.
Yeah, right. There was the Sleeping Avengers before the Sanest. What was it? Yeah, they had the Sleeping Avengers with Lurkin as the team captain, and now he's still team captain. But he also had Inky Frost, who's not present with us today. But Skinator and Alst are new hires, new trades that they just got. Skinator from Genshin 2.6 G2, and Alst actually as a new free agent. But I think we're about ready. You want to start it?
Yeah, looks like both teams are ready, and it does look like Team 1 is lowering their HP, so they should be able to get plenty of stacks. And they are going with Kazuha, so I think if they can get the Pyro Swirl at the beginning and then Hydro Infusion on burst,
it's the Kazuha double tech, right? Because if you play Kazuha, I feel like a lot of people think he's pretty brain dead because you just like go up to it and you press E, right? But really, Kazuha has a lot of mechanics to him, especially when you consider trying to get a good double shred off.
Yeah, and the burst infusion, I think that's going to be the most important part here. I don't think that Furina has enough application to keep Hutao vaping, so I think you need to swirl Hydro in your Kazuha burst.
Absolutely. There's the triple ready coming in from Chiori Glazers. And here they go. I mean, they're starting it. This is the first boss of the quarterfinals. Go for an early Furina heal and the early Furina ult. Tao going for that ult as well to try and get that trigger off for Kazuha. And do they get the Hydro Vape? Oh, they don't though. It looks like they immediately get the Pyro Infusion. But I mean, hey, do you see that 118 from Furina? I mean,
wow.
Wait, this is a Furina Vape, a Furina carry right here that we're all starting to see.
That is the power of C2 Furina with the 2-star weapon, I guess.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Is, I mean, vaping is a 2x multiplier. So,
but I will say they did start to hit their, I think they hit their uptime limit though, as you can start seeing here on Team 2's side. I think the Sanest Travelers with that Yelan Chaska team, they've really got it locked down. And as they're going head to head with each other, it does look like TST has already pulled ahead. So that Drake, again, kind of as we already predicted. Oh, Drake going up into the air for Chiori Glazers is definitely not something they wanted. But I mean, hey, that's kind of what they have to take. I think they understood the risk of what they were going to run during this match. So not having that vape in the correct orientation really did set the team back a little bit. I wonder if they're going to play it out though.
Yeah, I mean, my guess here is they just try to get energy, stay alive. Ooh, careful though.
Oh yes,
Kazuha just got hit, so maybe focus on that staying alive part.
Oh yeah, and here's a little bit of an explosion they almost died to last time. Everybody seems to stay fine. I mean, Skinator took a little bit of damage, but that's not too crazy. I think as the Younglight Drake decides to drop down. Yeah, we should be able to get some damage and at least close out the boss. Look at everybody though, full ults. That could be very useful when it comes in later. 134 coming in for Chiori Glazers. Again, not an optimal time by a lot of metrics, but they have full ults, they have their toolkit, and that could be what they need to start winning the next matches.
Yeah, next boss is Suwani, so I think we're going to see cryo options on both sides. Ayaka from Skit. And then my guess is it's going to be a Ganyu Nuvolette Chaska, because I think Ganyu Nuvolette is going to be stronger than Changyun Yelan. Or maybe a double cryo. Interesting if they actually go through with that.
I guess they're just going to commit to the double cryo. I mean, it's not the greatest option, but I think at this point in the draft, you know, when you lose out on all those Pyro characters, you don't have your Arlie, you don't have your Linny. I mean, I don't think they have a choice.
I just realized I forgot Suwani has Hydro resistance. Of course they're going to go double cryo. They're going to be dealing no damage. I mean, they have VV Shred, so personally I think Nuvolette still might be dealing more damage than Changyun. But that's most likely why they went Changyun, not Nuvolette.
But I will say though, I think Changyun has Shatter. And Shatter is actually a very key element to taking down Suwani.
That's true. They need someone to break that. You need to either melt or shatter the boss. So you need either a Geo character or a Claymore character. and Xiangyin fills that slot. So I'm guessing that's why they're going with that.
Yeah, and here we go. I mean, to be fair, they do have it basically on perma CC. I think that's a Serpent Spine that I'm seeing right there on Kyo's Changyin as well. And look at that very invigorating Chaska gameplay. Definitely very skill-oriented from what I can tell. I mean, come on, man. Okay, Chaska has 2 inputs, right? So, anyways, here we go. They do manage to take down the boss quite a bit. Changyin goes for that nice E, that nice Q as well, and so does Ganyu, making sure everybody in that circle's got the cryo up for them. But honestly, I don't know if this is going to really match out against the Sanest or was it Chiori Glazers, though. They do manage to get a really nice kill, or sorry, not a nice kill, but a really nice down on Swanee. Yeah, this does mean that their time's not going to be slow, but it's not going to be the fastest that they could possibly get if they had an ideal draft, 47-23. Now we're going to go ahead and move over onto CGZ's perspective. And I think they have a pretty good run at this. I mean, this is where the C6 Ayaka came out, right? This is where everybody knows they want to shine. You're basically playing a double DPS comp right here. And so far, nobody gets tagged, but I mean, Skit's on super low HP, but I don't think that really matters, though. You got the Death Shred, and that's a very excellent demonstration of how to play a Melt team, but it doesn't look like Swanee actually got into the correct phase. So I think they got a little ahead of themselves, but it might be okay. I mean, they still get the break, they still get the melt. Lurkin still gets out on Hu Tao and still gets those N1 season. Although he is missing a few, there's a second Ayako. Hopefully that's going to save his rotation, but Hu Tao's on downtime, finally manages to find one more hit, but I don't think that's going to be it, actually. I think they actually might lose Swanee, passing that 27 time, and it looks like Chiori Glazers have already made their first mistake here on Swanee.
Yeah, I'm surprised they went for the Hu Tao. I was certain that Navia was going to be the option there. Running Hu Tao with a Cryo and a Hydra character means that unfortunately there's going to be a lot more freezes than there are melts or vaporizes.
Yeah,
so I don't think it paid off for them there.
That was so close, but I don't think they were able to really able to execute on it. I mean, I think having the Farina was probably one of the better options, but again, I think they just didn't. I don't think they got the timing right on that either. Just the Ayaka ult just came off a little too early, and I think not having it fully stunned was a little unfortunate. But I will say, this is a really good Ayaka, though. I mean, if you've seen the
course, I mean, this is arguably Skit's best built character.
Yeah,
he's put so much time and effort into his C6 Ayaka, so he's certainly excited that he's able to play that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But interesting, yeah. I'm surprised that TST was able to win that. I mean, Chaska there had one bullet that was going to be Hydro. She's only getting 2 stacks of her passive because it's only Hydra and Cryo. But the team was still apparently able to deal enough damage that they were able to come out on top there.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, I think they just got to move on. They got to rest and recover. Apep's next, and honestly, this one's pretty open for TST, although I will say CGZ have the Kazuha, so if they need that grouping where they need it, then should be fine. But Novelette and Chaska, such great mobility that at this point, I just wonder what Chiori Glazers are going to have to cook to remind themselves that they're still in this fight. Anyway, dude, I don't know. Like sometimes these animations in co-op are just so goofy, but look at that walk up, that entry onto site. So really good stuff coming from
entry onto site.
I mean, yeah, they kind of didn't really get it with a perfect one cycle, but I don't know if Chiori Glazers is gonna hit a one cycle themselves either. But regardless, here we go into second phase now. They are starting second phase just as Chiori Glazers are about to begin their very own run as well. But there's the mobility I was talking about. I mean, like, you can see Novelette, you can see Chaska. They have so much range and so much coverage that doesn't really matter. Meanwhile, on top side, again, they ran into another bit of the Pyro Swirl. Al's not really able to get that Hydro application exactly where it needs to be, so not a one cycle either, and they are a little bit behind on damage. Kazuha might be able to pop it. There we go. But Hu Tao's going to have to play around with the uptime a little bit as we go into the animation phase. Meanwhile, TST still chipping away with the grouping that they have. I mean, they have, again, just really nice spread, really good player and character distribution overall as they advance onto that last phase of the boss.
Yeah,
and from what I can tell,
as always, just crushes that second phase.
Absolutely. You know? I mean, and now he just has to stand here, hold basically 2 buttons, barely jeopardizing his own position in the game. But I think at this point right now, I think Chiori Glazers is a little behind. They're only halfway through. Kazuha getting some nice grouping, but it's not anywhere nearly as instant as what Novelette or Chaska were able to do, and that's going to be a 125 that they have to beat. But at this point, I don't know. I think it's going slowly. They're picking it down one by one, and I don't know if Lurkin's really going to be able to pull off the same thing that he did last time. Oh, and they leave one little straggler. Farina catches it, but unfortunately, look at them. They're all out of position. They just don't have that mobility, don't have that positioning that Novala and Chaska are really able to afford. And honestly, this is going to be a little bit of a mess that they're going to have to clean up. Electrovine might just be where they turn it around, but again, this is not a great start.
Yeah, I mean, having a team where you've got one DPS, and that DPS is almost entirely single target, it's just not going to be as competitive as a team.
Yeah. But I mean, again, here we go. Just to close it out, at least. I mean, you do have outs on that Farina, which did end up keeping everyone alive. Beautiful ult from Lurkin, actually. That was a really nice ult for the iframe, both from Lurkin and Skit as well. Good use of their characters.
Another Pyrosaurel, unfortunately, though.
Yeah, I wonder what it is about that. I can't tell if that's intentional or not, though, because I don't know if a DPS Farina would really beat a DPS Hu Tao. But Skit does go down, unfortunately, off of that play, and it doesn't really matter. Farina actually clutches it up with that auto target. But again, 225 is not excellent timing right now for the two teams. I mean, CGZ has to start on their real back foot this time. I mean, their draft was a little scary, right? But this is really starting from scratch.
I mean, they've got a pretty good chance at winning GeoCube, certainly, and I think Electrovine, they've also got a pretty good chance at winning.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Popsicle keeps firing off charge attacks like that, I'm pretty sure they're gonna win Cryo or Electrovine. But
chance, certainly.
But actually, he does manage to find 2 out of those 4 shots. Not the greatest accuracy, but I mean, hey, he does happen to be damage carried by his Chaska, so that's going to be a 28-44 anyways, regardless. Still a really nice clear for them.
Yeah, Chaska definitely had enough damage there, so they were able to one-cycle it pretty easily, but that was a really slow break, so easily beatable by CGZ.
Yeah, I think especially when you start bringing that C6 Ayaka into the fight, I think that's where the difference is going to appear. And then remember, 4-3 is still something they can come back from. So I think if they really need to retry Spawny, they'll do it. No need to retry Drake. I mean, that was a pretty obvious loss right there. I think just not having that damage out of only 1 DPS, that's really what cost them the match. Or not the match, but cost them the early phase of the match. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see what their Electrovine performance is. That Ayaka should have enough application, but you have to hope that Ayaka can get a burst up, or they just don't run Ayaka. Actually, if they just run double Pyro,
I mean,
animal from Kazuha has plenty enough, so that might actually be faster.
It could. I mean, because it's the Pyro infusion, right, with the Animo, so it's not just like a pure Animo tap, but it's like you've got 3 layers of Pyro going at the boss, so surely it'll be enough, right? And here we go. Skit, remember, not starting with full energy, but does manage to time a swirl, so he's trying to make use of every single Pyro asset that he has. But again, this just doesn't look extremely favorable because they don't have range.
Yeah, Skit goes down, so it's just double Pyro here now.
Yeah, I think this could be a really interesting situation to try and deal with, but I think they actually call for an intentional DNF. This is very interesting, an intentional 27-second DNF, where it took them TST just the same amount of time to win the boss as the CGZ to DNF it, which is a little suboptimal.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Kazuha could stay alive there, then they might have been able to win that one, but Electrovine is quite deadly. It's got quite a few different moves that can easily one-tap a recently revived character. So
I think, yeah, it's like a lot of people don't really understand like how hard World Level 9 is, especially on the newer generation characters that don't scale off the older generation characters that don't scale off HP. I mean, these things basically do like 10,000 damage in one hit, right? So if you have an HP bar of 15k, I mean, you basically get 2-shot, and Kazuha is no exception to that rule. Although I will say, speaking of 15k HP, we are watching Terrashroom get absolutely torn apart by 15k ticks and 20k ticks, and that's a time that I don't know if Chiori Glaze is going to be able to
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean,
Olympic.
24 is not unbeatable, I will say. 20 seconds is what we're looking for an exceedingly good team for Terrace Room.
Mhm.
So it could be beatable if Chiori Glazers plays perfectly here. But 24 seconds is still quite fast, so
But
they're gonna have to
I
play
don't
their
know
ball.
if Chiori is going to keep playing. I think they know their disposition. I think they know their situation. And even though it is so incredibly early, I think this 4-0 start coming in from TST has really solidified the outcome of this match. Kind of crazy that they're not even going to play it out all the way into overtime, but I think after that Terrace Room time, I don't know if you're going to be honestly coming back as Chiori Glazers.
I mean, Weena is just not a boss that you want to have when you're playing Hutao. So I think that was a pretty good boss for TST to pick, and that's going to be a pretty easy win for TST. So
Yeah.
I understand why they might want to forfeit there. Unfortunately, that it was so early, but I think excellent gameplay from TST, excellent drafting. CGZ also played quite well and drafted quite well, but I think TST just comes out on top here.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I really have for. I mean, you just can't really beat that. What is it? You just can't beat that team when it comes to the kind of draft that they played. I think it was just again, if you play so aggressive in that drafting phase, like you really do start to lose out on having a good functional team for yourself, and I think that's what really cost. That's what really cost the Chiori Glazers.
Yeah, they took the Hutao and the Kazuha rather than taking something like a Mulani to allow them to get a good team. And yeah, it definitely made TST have a worse team. I think Hutao or Kazuha could have been as good or better than Chaska was for that Nouvelle Milan comp. But it meant that CGZ just didn't have a really excellent team to win those DPS checks.
Although I will say though, like, you know, you have to consider like there's some elements involved where it does look like it could have been like, yeah, I do think there were certain parts where it did come down to like gameplay overall, right? I mean, for example, like constantly landing those pyro swirls, that was just not the optimal outcome for what I can tell you.
I mean, like I was saying before, TST has the experience. They have played so much of this format of game, and so they've practiced pretty much every boss. They know what they're doing. They know how to get these team comps, and for them, for this game, it was pretty simple. Chaska Nufalet Yalan is not a very difficult team comp, so they flipped it on CGZ's head. They made CGZ take the more risky team. They took the easy team and were able to just stay consistent and come out on top.
Yeah, I think having that consistency is really what matters, especially like when you come to like threatening HP bars with such aggressive boss picks. It's just honestly, I think it was the right move from TST, and I think they played to their strength as well. So again, shout out to both teams for having a actually very competitive matchup, but I think ultimately when it came down to the drafting, when it came down to just the on-field gameplay, you know, I think there were just a few mistakes that couldn't carry them over the finish line. So TST will continue to remain undefeated as they have for the last, oh boy, for the last 7 months. I think, yeah, this is going to be a really interesting challenge. I wonder who they're going to be facing next, but you know, even as a third seed team, even though they might not have won prelims, their draft game goes hard, and so does their DPS.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So I think.
Anyways, our next match will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we will get to see Touchgrass together face off against the Musk Reef Refugees. And as another exciting match tomorrow, stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.